Hello everyone, this is Shannon from That's So Po, and today I'm doing week 12 of my 2022 reads. This week I finished a couple of things that I've been working on for months, and I read a bunch of mystery novels. Timestamps and content warnings are in the description box below. First, I finished The Warmth of Other Suns by Isabel Wilkerson. This is a book that I was buddy reading with my wonderful friend Wendy at BookNerdTV. Wendy is just such a great person. I love always chatting with her, and she reads such interesting nonfiction. And The Warmth of Other Suns is one of her favorite books that she's been meaning to reread, and I really wanted to read it too, so we decided a long time ago to buddy read this, and we finally got around to it. We took our time reading it over the course of 2 months, and that was so wonderful. Although I kind of feel like this book is just so well written that I could have finished it in just a week as well, even though it's pretty long. But this was wonderful. So The Warmth of Other Suns is basically telling the history of the Great Migration. So where a bunch of different people from the South moved north and to the East Coast and to the West Coast, and basically left a lot of the prejudices of the Jim Crow South behind to go look for more opportunity in the North and other regions of the US. And so this book is just so incredibly well written. It is structured around 3 oral histories. So Wilkerson interviewed tons and tons and tons of people, but made this book focus on these 3 people's narratives. And these 3 people are just such good representations of the different experiences of the Great Migration. So we have somebody who migrated in the 30s, another who migrated in the 40s, and another in the 50s. And they come from different socioeconomic backgrounds, different states, moved to different states. And so you see through their 3 narratives a lot of the kind of breadth of what happened during the migration. But Wilkerson also weaves in so much information, so much history, and so much statistics about what was going on. So it's as much a history book as it is an oral history of these 3 people's lives. And it's just so incredibly well written. The writing is amazing, and even though the topics in this are actually kind of heavy things. I mean, we're talking about a lot of racism and hate crimes and violence and all sorts of things, both in the South and in the North. But because it's got this intensely personal narrative to it, it's so beautiful to read, and I was just thoroughly engaged, and I always wanted to pick it up. Really amazing book. And I think that if you're intimidated by reading something like White Rage by Carol Anderson, which is another great book, but that one is very, very heavy, and it's just like a litany of all of the different things, all of the different kind of racist actions that have been taken against Black communities. If you're intimidated by something like that, pick up this one instead, because it covers a lot of the same history, but in such a beautiful way that is so human in its touch, and it's just such a lovely read. This book is not heavy. This book is just thoroughly engaging, and the history in it is so impressive, and also the way that it dismantles some of the false narratives that were happening at the time during the migration and kind of persisted today, really vilifying a lot of the Black people who migrated to the North. And it also just relates that migration to a lot of other immigrant experiences, and I found that was just so relatable. So yeah, I absolutely loved this book, kind of book of the decade type of thing. It was really excellent. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars, and I highly recommend that everyone give this a try. The other book that I finished that I've been working on for a while is Goodbye Mr. Chips by James Hilton. This is a book that my husband Sush read out loud to me. He had read this when he was in school and remembered really liking the story, and so he wanted to read it out loud to me, and it was so lovely. So this is a book that was written in the 1930s, I believe, and it is about a school teacher who taught at an all-boys school, taught Latin, and it's about his life, about his experience, about kind of not just him, but also the context. So it's set in England, kind of in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and we follow Mr. Chips as sort of, he develops as a person, and also as history unfolds, stuff like the Great War, all of that. I'm getting choked up just thinking about it, because this book made me cry so much. It was really sweet, but also just so many heartbreaking periods. Oh, it was just such a great read, and it's really short. It's just a novella, so I thought this was a great classic read if you're interested in reading something that is all about the history of the time, but also just very personal. Loved it. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. And then I picked up a number of books for March Mystery Madness. I have a vlog for that, which I'll link below, where I talk about all of these, but in case you didn't see the vlog, I'll go ahead and talk about them here as well. So for March Mystery Madness, I picked up 4 books. The first was The Man Who Died Twice by Richard Osman, which is the sequel to The Thursday Murder Club, and this was fantastic. I loved it even more than the first one. It takes place in a small British town and follows some older retirees who live in a retirement community, and they have an intense interest in helping to solve murders, and so they get involved when there are some murders in their town, assisting the police, and in this case also assisting MI5, which is like British Secret Service type of things, and there's mafia and there's stolen diamonds and there's all sorts of cool things. The characters are great, there's such funny banter, but there's also this kind of thriller aspect as they're trying to figure out what's going on. It's really excellent. If you like mysteries, I think you should give this series a try. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. Then I read Sword Dance by A.J. Demas. This is a romance novel that also has components of mystery in it. I heard about this series from Rachel at Kalanadi, who I'll link below, and I'm so glad that she talked about it and convinced me to pick this up because it was so wonderful. So this takes place in a secondary world that's inspired by ancient Greece, and we follow an ex-soldier who's working for the military now to help them procure things. And so he is going to a country estate to visit a woman who has a fish sauce operation to see if he can procure some for the military. But while he's there, a lot of weird stuff is going on, making it very mysterious, and he's a little bit worried since this woman is an old friend of his and he wants to make sure that everything's kind of okay. And one of the other people there is a sword dancer who is a eunuch and not binary, but he is just really beautiful and mysterious, and they're kind of drawn to each other. And so as the book goes on, they grow closer to each other as the mystery and political intrigue deepens around them. This was absolutely wonderful. I loved the world building. I loved the romance. I loved the characters, the mystery, and the political intrigue. All of it was great. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars, and I'm for sure continuing on in this series. Then I read Japanese Tales of Mystery and Imagination by Edogawa Rampo, translated by James B. Harris. So recently, Meonicorn at the Bookish land did a whole video talking about Edogawa Rampo, I'll link it below, who was basically the first person to write mysteries in Japanese. And so I was really intrigued, and I decided to pick up this short story collection, and I really, really loved the writing style. It's very reminiscent of Edgar Allan Poe or of like the Sherlock Holmes stories. It's got some very clever characters who do very awful things. There's a lot about human depravity in this, so I really, really enjoyed that atmosphere and the writing and the creepiness of it, but I had some issues with this too. So as the short story collection kind of went on, I found that there was a lot of repetitiveness in the type of story that was being told, so that kind of got a little bit old, and the ableism in this was kind of excessive. So many of the different stories had a very ableist tone, with disfigurement especially being used to sort of vilify people or to just really, really be quite harsh towards them. And one of the stories in this, The Caterpillar, I think that if you read this short story collection you should skip because it was almost toxic in its ableism. So that really, really brought down the book for me, even though I thought that the writing style and the atmosphere and kind of also just some of the cleverness of these stories was really cool. So it was kind of a mixed bag for me, and I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. And then lastly, I did end up DNFing one book, which was The Widows of Malabar Hill by Sujata Masi. This is a book that I heard really great things about from Rincey at Rincey Reads, who I'll link below. And I was very intrigued by this book because it's set in the 1920s in India and follows a woman who's one of the first female lawyers, and I just thought, oh, that sounds really fascinating. And it was. The setting and the whole premise was so, so interesting. But I ended up DNFing this at 10% because the writing style was just not working for me. So that first 10% is filled with just a lot of info dumping, which is a huge personal pet peeve. I really don't like info dumping. And it was filled with quite a bit of kind of interpersonal drama. The main character is just very impetuous and she reacts kind of extremely to a lot of things, and that just was not working for me. But I still think that this is totally something worth picking up if you're not sensitive to drama and info dumping. The setting is super cool, and I've heard such great things about this from Rincey as well as other people. So it didn't work for me, but it might for you. Okay, so that is everything that I read and DNF'd this week. If you guys have read any of these, if you're interested in any of them, if you have any thoughts, anything at all, just leave me a comment down below.